Watch closely at the right of your screen as a second jetliner heads for what even to the untrained eye looks like a surgical strike into the South Tower. Against a backdrop of gentle blue skies, a terrorist arrow pierces the heart of a city and a nation.
9/11, a day that shocked the nation. On that day, the Twin Towers were attacked, and so was the Pentagon. Flight 93 was also rumored to be headed toward the White House to destroy the White House, but was brought down midway by the courageous passengers aboard. What were you doing on 9/11?
The morning of 9/11, I was out running, and as I often do in the morning, and there was a neighbor man who often walked at the same time.
I was teaching. It's kind of weird because I was teaching 2 periods at Mount Whitney. I taught a civics class and U.S. history class, and then I taught 2 periods at Golden West. I was teaching 2 periods of world history, so it was kind of interesting to talk about.
It was a normal day, just like any other day. It started out. Of course, that happened on the East Coast at a time when we were just getting up. Most of us here on the West Coast, or if you were a student, you were probably still way asleep.
What went through your mind when you heard that the first plane hit the towers?
Well, I thought it was an accident the first time I heard. And
Well, when the first plane hit the towers, I wasn't awake at the time. And my brother had called our house, and I went and I saw the TV and was watching, and then that's when we...
So I grew up. My dad was an airline pilot, and right away, no one knew, that it was an intentional thing immediately.
When the first plane hit the first tower, it was assumed to be just an accident. But after the second plane hit the second tower, the nation realized that this was no accident. Did you realize it was an attack after the second plane hit?
After the second plane hit, you realized it was an attack.
I realized that it was a terrorist act.
Yeah, after the second plane, you don't get to, jumbo jets don't hit towers.
During the attack of the Twin Towers, the most secure building in the nation, the Pentagon, was also attacked.
Immediately what we hear is there's been an explosion at the Pentagon. So people thought there was a bomb because they didn't know that it was a plane at first, or at least media didn't know it was a plane. They just knew there was an explosion and a fire, and then we hear a 4th plane is missing. Because then they ground all the other planes. There could have been more planes, but they immediately, every airport in the United States grounds their plane, nobody's coming in.
And then about half an hour later, when the plane hit the Pentagon, it's kind of that oh crap moment, like America's under attack, and kind of interesting where you hear that another plane had been hijacked and not knowing what was going to happen with it, and then hearing that it crashed into the ground, not knowing the details that day, but assuming that plane was meant to hit something else, and maybe that the people had forced the plane to the ground. Because that day nobody really knew at the time. But we did start hearing details about how people were calling their loved ones while they were on the plane, and they were telling them what happened.
The lives of many brave men and women who went into the towers to save as many people as they could sadly ended. Question: how did you feel after you saw the towers collapse?
It's crazy. Even to this day, when you see movies, older movies pre-9/11 with the Twin Towers there was just such a dominant force on that skyline. To see them missing is just crazy.
It was just kind of that, oh my God. I mean, to have a tower like that collapse, it did what it was supposed to do, unfortunately. But you start thinking of the firefighters that were in there and just the people who were trapped towards the top of it. I mean, it's...
I'm not sure what was going through my head. It was just a horrifying day all around, and a really, really sad one. And
What separates us from the animals, and what separates us from the chaos, is our ability to mourn people we've never met in our lives.